Alrighty, welcome back to episode 28 of Book Nook Brews. And in this episode, we will be talking about the last remaining chapters of Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So that'll be chapters 24 through 30. And then we'll be doing our Brews review at the very end. Kind of bittersweet that we're getting to the end of this book.
Yeah.
But I have many thoughts, and I'm really excited to finally talk about these last few chapters, because even though the last set of chapters were a roller coaster, I feel like this one had me on the edge.
Yeah, that's true.
I was so... But, geez. What a time.
Yeah. I guess we can just go straight into it. That way we can also get to the opinions a little faster in the review. So again, we are using the chapter summaries that were provided by user yrod49 on Reddit for a book club Reddit page on here. So we can start off with chapter 24. In this chapter, Dr. Grace and Rocky are trying to figure out a way to breed Talmiba. They find that the only way to breed them is if they make them resistant to nitrogen. Therefore, they design experiments where they expose them to nitrogen so that they can become resistant to it. That was a pretty quick one. Chapter 25, Dr. Grace and Rocky have been able to breed Talmiba to be resistant to nitrogen on planet Earth, but not quite yet on planet Arid. Dr. Grace has also been having trouble cleaning out the fuel tanks since Talmiba is becoming increasingly resistant to nitrogen. Rocky tells Dr. Grace to go to sleep and that he will build completely new fuel tanks to replace the ones that were on the Hail Mary. Towards the end of the chapter, Rocky and Dr. Grace managed to breed the Talmiba to be resistant at 8% nitrogen, which would make it possible for it to survive on planet Arid. Dr. Grace and Rocky celebrate and eventually say goodbye to each other as they head to their respective homes. Chapter 26. Dr. Grace has a flashback from days before the launch of Hail Mary. He remembers Eva advising him about the severity of the situation concerning astrophage. Dr. Grace starts thinking about what he will say to Eva when he gets home. In addition, Dr. Grace starts working on the beetles just in case something happens and he's not able to reach Earth. However, as he's doing this and reaches for astrophage to put into the beetles, he realizes that they have been infected with Talmiba. Chapter 27. Dr. Grace checks his fuel storage just to make sure that Talmiba did not infect them again. He also checks that his breeder farms are airtight and that Talmiba are not coming out from there. Chapter 28. After conducting several tests, Dr. Grace realizes that epoxy and plastic are both effective barriers for Talmiba and Talmiba 82.5, which is the variant that they created. But Xenonite is only an effective barrier against Talmiba and not Talmiba 82.5. This means that Rocky's ship, which is completely made out of Xenonite, will lose all of his astrophage because Talmiba 82.5 will be able to prey on it. Chapter 29. Dr. Grace is faced with a dilemma. He can either return to Earth and be a hero, or he could send off the beetles with info and rescue Rocky and save planet Arid. Dr. Grace decides to send the beetles off to Earth and embarks on trying to find Blip A. After much searching, he finally spots the ship and he's able to spot Rocky. Dr. Grace tells Rocky about the situation at hand, and Rocky says that once they are at planet Arid, that they will be able to gather enough astrophage to send Dr. Grace home. However, Dr. Grace cannot go home because he will not have enough food to survive him the trip, and the food on Arid is too toxic for him to consume. Chapter 30. Dr. Grace decided to stay on Arid. If I'm correct, chapter 30 was a little bit of a flash, or not a flashback, fast forward, right? Like
Yeah.
a little time jump. Dr. Grace decided to stay on Arid. The scientists on Arid have made it possible for him to stay alive because they have provided him with the necessary food and nutrients that his body requires. He still meets with Rocky, and on one day, Rocky tells him that Sol, which is the Earth's sun, has returned to full luminance. This means that the information that he sent back to Earth was received and planet Earth has been saved. The book ends with Dr. Grace unsure whether he would want to go home because it would be a very long and lonely journey. That was incorrect, I think. That didn't do the ending justice there because I don't think it ended that way. Because, yeah, they mentioned that, but then they didn't do the whole full circle moment. So the way that
exactly.
the way that the book actually ended was him having that conversation with Rocky and was like, like maybe like that gives him hope or whatever, right? And that eventually he could consider, but he's also saying he's old. And, during this whole thing, he was saying that he was going to be late for wherever he was going. And then like the very last part, the ending was, I forgot what question he asked, but he asked a question to a group of students in a classroom. And when he asked the question, instead of hands being raised, it was claws. He was teaching a bunch of
Iridians.
their Iridians, right? Iridians?
Yeah.
Yeah, planet Arid. Yeah, he was teaching a class of Iridians. So he is now a teacher on planet Arid. But I'm surprised they didn't include that in that summary. That was a very full circle for Dr. Grace, and it was really cool to see it end that way. So, yeah, that is the end of Project Hail Mary.
Oh my gosh, so much happened. I really enjoyed the ending. I really enjoyed these last set of chapters overall. We knew that one of them was not going to make it home. And more likely than not, it was going to be Dr. Grace rather than Rocky. Because they can't do that to Rocky. What the hell is Rocky going to do on Earth?
Yeah.
There's no way. They're going to just look at him as a specimen and not really treat him like one of them, like they did with Dr. Grace. Which, by the way, the recap didn't also mention it, but it's a minute detail. But that Dr. Grace, he eats me burgers.
Yes. Yeah, which are just because the scientist on Arid could or did what was it, replicate his like, I guess, the composure of the human flesh.
Yes.
Or whatever, to be able to make like meat.
Mm-hmm.
And so essentially he's eating his own flesh, really, without it coming off of him. So he called it a me burger. Yeah. Rather than the Grace burger or something like that. He called it me burger.
It's so strange.
Yeah.
But I really like how selfless in this moment, like when it came down to it, that he decided to go take care of Rocky first.
Yeah.
And it's true, because the moment he got there, Rocky's like, this is all going almost like a little child. He's like, this is not going well. Like, I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah.
Rocky was so happy. He's like, Grace, you came back. You came back for me.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And then he was telling him to make that tunnel so he can get him out or whatever. And then he hit him with a bit of sass, and he's like, well, go back to your ship or else there won't be a tunnel for you to go through, or you won't be able to go through, something like that. Something like he was hitting him with that sarcasm again. And then it was cool to see at the end there, Rocky was speaking like full on sentences.
Yes.
Of I guess to us it seemed like English, but really Grace was speaking Iridian. No, because even his sentences were in that italic.
Oh.
You didn't notice that?
No.
Yeah, his sentences were in the way that Rocky's stuff was.
No. No way. But how does
And then
he...
that's why the chapter was in that. It said instead of chapter 30, it was chapter 30, but it was in that weird symbolization, because that is Rocky's language. And throughout that last chapter, when they were speaking in numbers, they were showing the symbols like that for numbers. So we were getting Dr. Grace speaking Iridian, but to us it was English. So really, Dr. Grace was speaking his language, and that's why it seemed like full English sentences, because Rocky was speaking his own language.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And he had also mentioned that he now did not really need much of a translation because he's there.
Yeah, exactly.
He's surrounded by it. He had to learn. He had to learn to adapt to it.
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
I thought it was really good. It's a really good book, a cute story. And I'll save the rest for the review.
Did you like the ending?
Yeah. I mean, can't say we didn't see it coming. I think we talked about it in the last episode, and we said that could be one of the endings. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I did like it. I enjoyed it. It was a good ending.
So what did you want more from it then?
I don't know. I don't know what I want, but it didn't. I don't know. It didn't satisfy me. And again, I'm going to bring this up during the review for one of the things, but it was a decent ending, like a good enough ending for me.
Did you feel like it was rushed, or was it a pacing issue then?
No, I think it ended where it was supposed to, but I think I just wanted more from, I don't know, because it's not pacing. It's not, I don't know. Like I said, I'll get to it in the review. But it was more so expectation that kind of let me down. But, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. What I really enjoyed, I mean, overall, and I think this is going to be touched a little bit more on the review itself as well, but I just keep enjoying the dynamic between Rocky and Dr. Grace.
Yeah.
It's just so almost playful, not juvenile, but very youthful in a sort of way, because you're meeting someone of a different species for the first time, and for him to be such a nerd about it, like he's so intrigued and invested in Rocky, just as Rocky is just as invested into Dr. Grace.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite moments from this set of chapters is right before they departed, or left each other's different ways. He was telling Rocky, he's like, by the way, on Earth, we have a scary, deadly creature called a spider. You look like one of those, just so you know. He's like, good, proud. I am scary space monster. You are a leaky space blob. Check thanks.
Yeah.
That dino, I just loved it. But personally, I like the ending, and I think most of all, I like the ending because of that full circle moment. Because he didn't get to go back to Earth because he understood that it was going to be a way longer journey, and he just doesn't have it. I mean, he was walking on a cane.
Yeah.
At 50 something years old.
Yeah.
Because of the gravity has now taken a toll on his bones. Granted, through everything he's gone through, probably even more. That man is not really going to live that much longer. He probably wouldn't even have made it back to Earth.
Yeah.
And what was he going to make it back? For what?
Yeah.
Probably nothing. Is it the most realistic story? No, but it's sci-fi, and I don't think it's really meant to be all that realistic to an extent.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I think it tied it all very well. But yeah, I'm very satisfied that there was no death, no Rocky death, because otherwise I think I would not have made it to this podcast.
Yeah.
Not today. There's no way you're gonna kill my boy, even though he kind of does look like a spider. It doesn't fully look like one. Therefore, I have to watch the movie.
Yeah. I will say I did appreciate the fact that they didn't try to kill anyone again.
Yeah.
I know I expressed that in the last episode where I'm like, that cannot happen again, because then that would just be overdoing it, and at that point it's not, and like that would just take me out of it.
Yeah.
So that was good to see. I get like it, and for these set of chapters, I enjoyed them. Like these last set, like they just wanted to make you keep reading, right, to find out like what was next and the end and all that. Just overall of the story, I have opinions, but just for right now, like this set of chapters was very good, and it was a very good ending for the set of chapters.
What set of chapters has been your favorite so far?
I think maybe the second set.
The second?
And then or this one, just because of, like I said, this one just kind of kept you going.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second set, I think, is where we were getting a lot more info. That's when we first met Rocky. So them settling their language, building that relationship up, and just kind of getting a little bit from both, right? And then the third one had the action in it for a bit, and then but that's pretty much all that one gave me. And the first was just the introductory part, right? But I think I enjoyed that second portion of it where that relationship was being built. But then this one, because like you said, the way it ended, that full circle moment, it was very much like he got his life back almost.
Yeah.
Right. Because he cared about teaching, and you can see that carried on with him even light years away. So that was cool.
One thing I wanted to just quickly mention, another one of my favorite moments was towards the end wherein he was talking with Rocky. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to leave soon too, because Adrian's about to go to sleep, so I need to watch her.
Yeah.
It's those different customs where now I'm wondering, does anyone watch Dr. Grace fall asleep? No,
I don't think so. Probably not.
so he got his just wish to just not be watched, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a little thing. But I guess without further ado, I guess we can go ahead and start talking about the Brews review.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's start off with B, book characters. What'd you rate it?
That one I did a 5. I didn't think there was anything missing from anyone that we met.
Mm-hmm.
Those who got a little part of it, that part was enough. And then for Rocky and Grace, we got exactly what we needed. We got that relationship build. We got enough info from their like respective sides and what their issue is, and what they have behind them, and the reason they needed to save their planet and stuff like that, other than the fact that the planet would die. We got touched on the fact that he has like a mate, like Rocky has a mate back on Earth, and how they have the whole civilization too and all that kind of stuff. So I think overall it was pretty good on the characters, like just a 5 out of 5 on them.
I also gave book characters a 5. Overall, I think Andy Weir, personally, I think he did a better job at writing the book characters in Project Hail Mary compared to The Martian, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think I just like how they're better developed, in my opinion. They have more to them. I mean, obviously in The Martian, the main character was just oh my gosh, what is his name? Is it just Mark?
Mark is the actor. No, wait, no, that's Matt. The Martian was, hang on, Watney.
Okay, yeah.
But what was his first name? Oh yeah, Mark.
Yeah. So
Mark played
Watney,
by Matt.
I mean, obviously he was the main character in just that one, so we got to really go through his own journey. He was fleshed out, of course, but with Project Hail Mary, I guess you get a little bit more depth from each character. Obviously, Dr. Strat, she's the one who has to make these difficult decisions in this very tough moment for Earth. And she may not be the most likable character, but you can understand where she's coming from many of her decisions. And so, at least from the main ones that we got to meet, I felt I could relate a little bit more to and really understand. Obviously, we love Rocky and Dr. Grace as well, but I feel more of an attachment to all of these characters.
Yeah, I forgot about mentioning. What was her name? Strat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even her input into the story kind of put into perspective what Grace was doing in the whole thing, and kind of also gave us a better idea of who Grace was as a person, while also kind of giving us that little almost like antagonist type of feel from Strat without there really being a villain, which added that little extra thing to her character and then also to Grace's character, because it's like she called him a coward, but then that's when we see kind of like both sides, and it starts making you think a little more about, well, actually he is kind of in the right about not wanting to do it, because it's also his take on it. And then we see that he was forced, and then now he's basically on another planet living out the rest of his life, but not by his choice, really. Like, well, that part was like he could have gone back, but the fact that he's up there in the first place wasn't his, but he dealt with what was brought to him.
I felt what he learned from Strat about, him being a quote unquote a coward pushed him to making the decisions he did towards the end of the book.
Yeah.
Almost as if he never really said it in the book to prove that he's not a coward, but those actions show that he's not someone who cowers away from these decisions, but rather has more to him, more valor, and more than just being selfish about his own needs, but can put others in front of himself.
Right.
And he did that with Rocky by sending out those beetles rather than in him going there to be the hero. He instead sent out the beetles and just went to go help Rocky. So, yeah, book characters, 5 out of 5. That was incredible. How about relatability?
I gave that a 5 as well. Just because, overall, none of us are like in space and all that kind of stuff. But the moral of the story and then the feelings that Grace was going through and all that kind of stuff, I felt like was very relatable. Like him figuring everything out through the flashbacks and stuff was also just us figuring it out with him, which gave that connection a little bit more of a like push and could make you relate to Grace very heavily at times. And it kind of just made the whole experience a little better, how much you could relate to that character and to the situations that he was in. And like I said, like in the other one, like in the book Characters About Strat, it's like you can see where he's coming from on some parts and go with his decision as well and stuff like that. So I thought relatability was also 5 out of 5.
I give it a 4. Yes, it is relatable. Like the characters, you can relate to their decisions, their thoughts, what they're going through, and how they're processing this tough moment, essentially. There were kind of some moments of, I think, just Grace overall that kind of put me off. And so that's why I couldn't fully give it like a 5, at least from like his character and everything. But everything else, like you said, you understand both sides to where Strat felt like the only decision that she could do was to send off Dr. Grace, and rather than, actually giving him a decision about it, she kind of did, but she's like, nah, at the end, you're actually going to go. And he was mad about it because, you're taking someone's ability to be like, I'll go ahead and sacrifice myself for this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you understand where Strat's coming from because he is the most qualified person. And with not having enough time on your side, this is the only way you can get that done. So, 4. How about enjoyable?
Was that not experience?
Experience. Well, and experience. How much you enjoyed it?
I gave that a 4.5.
Oh.
It's a very good story, very good book, whatever. But the expectation that was set to me based off what really everybody said about the book was kind of set like, like we saw a bunch of videos where it said it broke people's scale. This did not. This it is like, it's very close to a 5 out of 5 for me, like overall, but that's about it. Like I don't know what about it broke people's scale. To me, it's a very good book and a very enjoyable read and keeps you hooked the entire time. And, once you want to keep going until the end, but that's about it. Like, I'm not going to break my scale, say this is a 10 out of 5 or anything like that over it. And that's, I guess, what kind of ruined it for me a little bit is how much hype it was getting with people's reviews that I was looking at. And I didn't get that feeling, but overall it was still a very good experience. Like, it was close to a 5 out of 5 experience, but it was just the fact that I had that in the back of my mind where, these people are rating it very highly. Something else has to be going on here. And then I just never got that, is what kind of brought it down a bit. So I did a 4.5.
Okay. I gave it a 5. Just me not being much of a sci-fi fanatic.
Yeah.
To me, this is really good sci-fi. But I agree. Um, I think we were giving a lot. We were under the impression that this was like a fantastic epic read, and it is a fantastic read. At least for me, maybe because I'm not much of a sci-fi fan. This, like you said, didn't really break any scales for me. I found this book very endearing. I enjoyed so much the relationship between Rocky and Dr. Grace. Like that for me was the highlight and the best part of this book.
Yeah.
My favorite thing. And I think that's what made this a lot more enjoyable because when Dr. Grace was talking a lot of science, that's where you started to lose me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But what really kept this afloat was the relationship between Rocky and Dr. Grace. I mean, obviously the whole plot as well of trying to save both Arid and Earth slash Sol, that solar system. I really enjoyed it. And for being a sci-fi, for me to kind of be hooked and wanting to continue to read it rather than just dragging my feet.
Yeah.
That's why I gave it a 5.
Yeah.
But I really do understand your point of where you were. I mean, we saw the videos of people being like, wow, this just broke the scale. If I could read this again, like without remembering anything, I would. This is over a 5. And I mean, that goes to show how different readers we are overall.
And the thing I think I probably would have given it like a 4.8 if it was solely just because of that. But I think now, like hearing you talk about it and stuff like the reason that you enjoyed it so much is I think what knocked it down for me a little bit more. Like you enjoyed it because of the relationship between Rocky and Dr. Grace.
Yes.
Right. And which was very good. It was very cute. It was a very good relationship and enjoyable storyline there. And like, I will keep saying that forever. That was very good, very cute, very enjoyable. But that's the problem. To me, for this to be breaking so many people's scales, this to me is easily a Disney animated movie. This is easily Lightyear with Buzz Lightyear and socks. This is easily a main character with Wall-E. This is easily that kind of scenario. And this was just an animated movie put into a book other than the deaths of the 2 scientists. But that could easily also be Disney-fied, right? To lose those 2 scientists in a little explosion. Just like in Lightyear when the leader of the whole thing died of age. They just kind of disappeared her from the chair.
Yeah.
Right? It kind of like that. Like there could be an explosion. They don't show anything and whatever. Like that's as gruesome as it's going to get. And everything else could easily be made into that Disney animated thing. And it would still be the same story. You won't feel like the story was changed for an animated film. Like you know how a lot of people complain because if Disney gets a project and was like, oh, that means it's going to be kidified. No, this book could easily be replicated onto a Disney animated film and it won't feel changed. And I think that's where I had another problem with it. Like that's what brought it down to 4.5. Because of how much of the hype it was getting, you thought you were going to get this, I don't know, like a bigger, I don't know what it is. I don't know if story or something else added in there that I never really got. And I think like after the second set of chapters where we met Rocky and that relationship was built and all that, like I had said, that's my favorite set of chapters, but that's also where kind of that idea cemented. It's like, oh, Disney could make bank off of this. Mm-hmm. It's easy money right here. And that's what kind of also now has me thinking about the movie. It's like, how
are they going
to do this, right? Like now I'm afraid of it being a live action one because I don't think they will be able to do it justice how an animated movie would be able to do it. I think you could do this a lot better as an animated movie than a live action.
Interesting. Ooh.
Yeah. So that's what brought it down to a 4.5. Because if it wasn't for that, if I actually got that little extra oomph or whatever, I would have given it a 4.7, 4.8 if it was just because of the whole expectation thing, right? Like all the people's reviews and stuff like that. But and I think that's, which is weird. Like that again goes to show how different readers are, because the reason you enjoyed it so much is literally the reason that I'm kind of knocking it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because that, like that, I think that's the reason that it captivated you a little more. Like I got you hooked because of that little Disney creature to human relationship that you got from like Lightyear and socks. Like you were obsessed with socks.
Yeah.
And in this case, if this was an animated movie, you would have been obsessed with Rocky just as much as you are by reading about him.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that same little connection. And I think, and not think, that's exactly why you enjoyed it so much and why it knocked me down a bit.
Yeah, that whole relationship. I mean, if every single episode, that's exactly what I talked, except for the first one, obviously. But once we got to meet Rocky, I was hooked on their relationship. I was hooked on the way Rocky reacted, because in a way it is very much Disney-esque per se. A lot of this, even though it has some like PG-13 or even a little bit more like mature content, and like when they were talking about like heroin and stuff like that, that's what I meant. Like they were very, very far and few, you know, some cussing action here and there, but not it. You can easily reel that back in to make this into a Disney film, whether that be animated or live action. And it's that relationship. It's just adorable. I can't, but I can see how that's what puts you off, because you want a little bit more. I think you want more seriousness, because I mean, yes, they're dealing with a very serious issue, but we got so many lighthearted moments that it kind of took the seriousness away. And that's why I think you wanted a little bit more serious and more action.
Because we have two, like you said, like we have two planets dying over here, and we're making jokes between an alien and a human. Like that's where it kind of, like you said, took me out of it. But
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what about writing style?
I also gave that a 4.5.
Me too.
It was very good, and it was the first time we had something like that, or that I've read something like that, and that we've read something like that in the podcast. I don't know if you read something similar in the past, but for it to be going from, you know, the current time and then that flashback, but that he's experiencing as well, for us to be finding stuff out, that was interesting and it was great. But sometimes I felt like it took me out of the actual story.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's meant to be like part of it, but sometimes it didn't feel like that. It felt like a flashback, but like it cut between the story rather than flow into a flashback. I don't know I don't know how you would make that better. I don't know how to describe it better, but that's what I felt, and that's why I give it a 4.5, because while I still enjoyed it very much and it was a different experience, sometimes it took me out, so I had to knock it some points. I'm not going to tell you it's a 5 out of 5 if it took me out of the story.
And I agree so much, because those flashbacks sometimes they felt off, felt like almost you were being removed or like joinked out of it, because usually I'm used to like these cuts in between a moment, because you're going to a different scene in the chapter or in the storyline, and this one you're cutting the moment to go back to a flashback, and you're not really fully aware that you're going back to a flashback until he's like, oh, so that's what happened. It's like, oh, now I remember I'm this. it's very off-putting at first, and it isn't until like a couple chapters in you're like, oh, okay, yeah, these are just flashbacks. This is how we're gonna get the information from the past. So that's why I had also given it a 4.5. There was another reason, and it's, even though I really enjoyed the characters, there were some moments, some phrases of Dr. Grace and his thoughts that really took me out of the moment. It just seemed very almost forced to be not cringe, but very character-esque. Like I know these are book characters, but it just seemed very
Forced.
yes. I mean, yeah, it's just very forced to be a character rather, and it just didn't flow well sometimes. And I got that exact same feeling from The Martian at times, but it's not a lot to where you're like, okay, I'm done with it. I mean, like obviously I gave the characters a 5, the book characters a 5, but that's you just get that feeling every now and then, and that's where I'm like, oh, I got the exact same feeling with The Martian. I'm kind of getting it here, but it's enough to kind of just push by it and go with it. I think that's just Andy Weir's writing style, his comedy in a way.
Yeah.
So that's why I ended up going down to like a 4.5.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, my thing just shut down. Storyline. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 5.
Me too.
I think the overall idea of the book and the whole both planets dying, we get this like alien thing. I think all that was great. It was, I don't know if to call it a very original idea, because it has a lot of mixed in from various things, right? You could see inspirations from a couple of things, but it was still a very good idea itself, and the way it was executed, I think, was decent. Like I said, it was still a very enjoyable book. It's just expectations that brought it down. But overall, the story, the characters, all that put together to make this plot was well put together, and it was a very good story. Just it's a good read. It's, once you know what you're going into, I guess it is a very pleasant read and a good storyline, and yeah.
Yeah, again, the relationship between the two characters, the actual storyline, it was very readable, and I enjoyed it so much. The storyline, like you said, maybe not the most like original thing out there, but this is probably executed in the best way,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
And then when I called it a Disney animated movie, it's not to knock it, right? It's also a compliment when, you know, something like this can be put into a Disney animated movie. I mean, I'm not gonna say all of them, but most of them are hits,
Mhm.
right? And for me saying that this could easily be in there is because it is. It's like the storyline is the main part, right? You have that.
You know what? I think I also understand why you may like not like, well, not like have docked it some points,
Yeah.
because this book has a different vibe and feel to it compared to The Martian. It goes back to that seriousness.
Yes.
You got that a lot more from The Martian. You felt the stakes were higher.
Yeah.
In this one, you understand that the stakes are higher, but you don't really get that feel.
Yeah.
And I can't quite put like an exact word or phrase for it. Maybe it is because I feel like the book did focus a little bit more on the relationship between Rocky and Dr. Grace. And I guess you just, it's, I guess in this way, it's maybe more character than plot driven.
Yeah.
The characters are the main focus, as it usually is in many stories, but the plot, not so, it is brought up, but like
Yeah.
there are many, okay, let me explain it this way. There are many romance books, or like books overall, where the characters are like the main focus and the plot is just there to kind of support the characters.
Yeah.
In this, Andy Weir does a good job of kind of juggling juggling both the plot and the characters, but sometimes the characters just carried.
But and like you said, a lot of books have that where the characters can carry, but when you have a plot like this that is,
Severe.
like you said, severe, serious, you want a little bit more of it, right? Of that plot seriousness, and don't want the characters to carry that much. And I think what very much solidified it for me in that third set of chapters was when they were both in situations of death, right? Where they could have both very well died. But because of that relationship, and like to me was already a Disney type of relationship, I knew nothing was going to happen to them because of that. Like, you could call it Disney magic feeling or the power of friendship, whatever, right? A lot of stuff goes like that. That's the vibe I was getting. And that's why in those quote unquote serious moments, I didn't really feel that seriousness, right? It's like, oh yeah, Rocky sacrificed himself for Grace. Cool. Rocky's going to live because he did that. Grace was about to die, or Rocky was about to die, and Grace helped him out. Cool. Rocky's not going to die because of that. And that's why I was like, in the previous episode, I didn't want another scenario of close to death because it was going to be the exact same thing. Like, I didn't want to say my opinion yet about the Disney magic or power of friendship thing yet, just because I was like, oh, maybe it'll change, right, or something. But no. From that moment, I was like, they better not do this again because this is going to be the same scenario. Nobody's going to die here. Mm-hmm. Nobody. And so you're right. That's, I think that pretty much described it pretty well, where the plot was so serious, we should have pushed that a little more rather than let's focus on the characters, build them up so you understand why they end up together at the end, right? Rather than
it's overall a very lighthearted book.
It is. Yeah.
And that's nothing to knock it. Like you said, saying it's very Disney-esque is nothing bad.
Yeah.
But I guess you think that the story would be a little bit more serious than it ended up being, which is more likely the reason why I did enjoy it very much.
Yeah. And I feel like
but I think it's a great gateway into sci-fi. You get you get many of the elements there. It's very good.
Yeah. And I think that's another one of the reasons why the expectations kind of ruined it for me, because now that, we read the whole thing and now we're saying, okay, yeah, this is very Disney-esque. What about that broke people's scales? That, like, in my head now is like, what about that? Like, are your scales so broken that this, like, I don't want to shit on people's scales or anything, because it's still a very good book, but at the same time, to me, it's not one that would break a scale, especially for people who are on TikTok, right? That were book review TikToks who were showing all these other books that they have read, and for that to be the one that broke it that high, and it was like, yeah, this is book of the year, all that kind of stuff. What about this? Like, I'm interested, like, what about this did you think was so out there, like, so good? Because, like, we keep repeating, it's not an original, it's inspired by other things, and then it also has that Disney animation vibe, right? So it's like it felt more of a almost family friendly sci-fi book, almost. And so that being so close to family friendly is what making me think, how did all these people have that same opinion? That's what has me curious about the people that I read that book. Because yeah, it's a really good book, but I don't know what to say. Like, oh, I wish I could reread it without remembering it and stuff like that. I don't know.
I mean, again, it goes back to everyone being a different reader.
Yeah.
And everyone's level of sci-fi is very different.
Yeah.
So it could just be that this for them was that kind of amazing book. The same way that many of my quote unquote like romance books are like high up there. That for you, they're not really a book of the year kind of thing. We're just different kind of readers. But I am curious as to maybe like what element is the part that really made it such a standout book.
Yeah.
I think I know some people had mentioned or alluded to the fact that it was rocky without trying to spoil like that in their video. I do remember that. So I think many people did like that relationship, and I think that's exactly the standout part of it. So I don't know, for me, not knowing much about sci-fi and not really getting into it, this has at least piqued my interest into wanting to read a little bit more sci-fi in the future.
Yeah.
So, but you know, who knows? It may just be that a family-friendly kind of sci-fi is my thing.
Yeah.
And anything else, maybe not. But who knows?
So I guess with that, my overall rating was a 4.8. So it's still high, very close to a 5 out of 5. Because again, it was a very good book, and I'm not gonna do it, but it is a rereadable book. I think if you want that vibe of book. So yeah, very close to a 5 out of 5. Doesn't break the scale. I'm still on that, but 4.8. I think it's tied for my highest rated book with,
I think so.
what is Portrait of a Thief?
Portrait of a Thief and Fourth Ring. Those were your higher ones.
Yeah. And we'll see. I'll have to revisit, but yeah.
I gave this a 4 points, or my overall, the average ended up being a 4.7.
4.7. Okay.
Which I would very much agree with that. Agree with that rating. It's a really good sci-fi book. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it to other people, especially if someone's not into sci-fi. I'd be like, read this, get back to me, and then we can talk about Rocky.
Yeah.
But it has piqued my interest into wanting to read more sci-fi. Would I read this book again? I don't think so, but that's mainly because I have other things I would rather read first. Rather
than reread this again.
Yes, exactly. And even then, I don't know if I would consider, I mean, it's a cozy read.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what that is? It's a cozy read. I have other cozy reads that I would read before this.
Yeah.
Because my cozy reads usually include romance, and this one at least explores the friendship between an alien and a human. But I usually enjoy my cozy relationships between a human and another human.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. 4.7.
Yeah. And I think I said rereadable because it gave me that animated movie vibe where it was one that you can rewatch.
Yes.
And it's a cozy story, basically, right? Maybe not a rereadable book, but a rereadable story. I don't know, like a re-experience of a story, right? And yeah, so 4.8, 4.7. And that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So still very high up there. But now it's time to bring up the book for September.
Yes. So for September, I chose The Puzzle Master by Danielle Trussoni. Um, I picked this up at Writer's Block. Just a random day. It was pretty much an impulse buy, but mainly because of the amazing cover. And I think that's what gets me many times with these books. I mean, why did I buy that one book at Barnes and Nobles this weekend? Because of the cover and the edges. It was just so cool.
Yeah.
It had a good story. But yeah, it's going to be The Puzzle Master by Danielle Trussoni. We'll be reading chapters 1 through 19.
For the first one.
For the first, yeah. I did want to mention, it seems like a lot of chapters. I mean, the overall total is like 67 chapters. But this book is not that big.
It's only, what, 350
or 62-ish?
Yeah.
It's no more than 370.
Like you told me at the beginning, you're like, yeah, that seems like a lot of chapters, but each chapter is like 4
pages long.
Which I did mention that I like it's already iffy for me because what's the need to split into 4 pages?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we'll find out with the story, and then we'll judge if it made sense.
The only other book that we've seen that has like this many chapters was Portrait of a Thief.
Yeah, but now we know that was because of perspectives.
Yeah, those are perspective. This, we don't know.
Yeah.
I am curious as to how, like, if this is going to feel like a fast pacing kind of book.
Yeah.
But we won't really know until we start that. So, yeah, next week it'll be chapters 1 through 19. It's about a little less than 95 pages in that one book. So I am excited for that. And before we do end this episode, I did just want to plug our social media, which now that I'm looking at it, I will change it next Monday, the book of the month.
Yeah.
I will remember. But follow our social media. More active on Instagram right now at the moment. It's called the Book Nook, or at the Book Nook Brews. Book Nook Brews everywhere else. But yeah, follow us. I'm trying to post a little bit more often. Just can be a little bit difficult when you have other things in life, but trying to be a little bit more on top of it. And I think that's all I wanted to make sure to mention. Yeah. Anything else on your end?
No, I guess we'll see you next week for the start of The Puzzle Master for chapters 1 through 19.
Bye-bye.
See ya.